Okay, we're gonna do a video on, looks like you got a noisy clamp motor, or it's coming from the clamp. I seen your video and you were doing the clamp down, but it's an easier way to do the clamp down for future reference. It's just the center button here and this one instead of the cut ones. So center button and left, and it will just be clamp only, and you can reverse. The blade won't come to correct. But from your video, I was able to tell that it is coming from the clamp and not the blade, so it's just going to be the clamp motor or something associated with it. So the first thing I do is you want to unplug this from power, and then turn off your cutter, unplug it, and then so you need to take this crown off. So it's 2 screws, 2 Phillips, and 2 on the other side, and then you just lift it up. You either have somebody unplug this from the board, or you can usually just lift it straight up and it'll come unplugged. The first thing I do is, make sure nothing was rubbing in here or messed up. But like sometimes if this wire came loose like this one, I'm gonna have to put a different stick square on this one. But just make sure the wire needs to be out of the way to that side. It'd be to the left side, I guess. And make sure like something ain't hanging here that the belt and thing is hitting and making noise. But I kind of doubt that. But once this is off, you can actually plug your cutter back in and turn it on. And then just do a clamp down on this one and see how it works. You gotta wait for your cutter to reset, so give it about 10 seconds and the paper push is not gonna know where to go since the ground's off, and then eventually it will just go all the way to the back. Wait for the paper push to go all the way to the back and stop, and then you can do a clamp down and see if it still makes the noise. Because if it doesn't, then it has something to do with your crown and maybe this belt rubbing against it when it's turning. That's the clamp. So you can see that's how it works. Then we'll reverse it. And that's it. This has to do with this belt. Here's the top of the clamp motor. Here's the clamp motor and this gear. Okay, if that's quiet, then we know we need to look something to do with your crown and this rubbing on something or something's going on there. But I suspect that it will still be noisy for you with this crown off. And if that's the case, we need to look at this motor here. And the first thing I do is look at the bottom of this thing. I'm gonna go like this on this. I'm gonna just go back and forth on this belt. You don't want to go too far where you pinch yourself there or there, but just kind of keep it in the middle, back and forth at a decent speed, and see if you can recreate that noise. If you look up in these holes, I don't know if you can see it in this video, but I'm going to move this belt back and forth now. There's a fan in there that moves around. Just kind of pay attention, make sure that's not clanking around in there. It could have came loose and started clanking around in this cage here. And if that's the case, you just have to retouch that fan. You should be able to see it move. Just make sure it seems attached good and it's moving back and forth according to moving this like it's supposed to, and not kind of like flopping around in there or something. That'd be the second thing I'd check after doing a test with the crown off. The next thing I'd check is just take this belt off, and the way you do that is you're gonna lift up and go. You don't lift it that high, but up and over, just don't get your finger caught in there. Up and over, up and over, up and over, up until that belt comes off. Now you can check this here and just make sure it has smooth movement by hand. This is, if you look at this is the clamp going down by hand and going up by hand. And you can kind of try to move this, see if this is all loose or wobbly, or it should be tight. Everything should be tight here. Then it should be able to spin back and forth nicely and quietly. The other thing is this bracket. Make sure this clamp here is not, it's got bolts on it to hold it. Make sure it's not loose. It's onto this bracket good. It's nice and tight. And that this bracket, with these bolts here, are tight to this frame. So you can, it's not moving at all. It should be nice and tight. This motor should be tight to this bracket, and this bracket should be tight to this. And if that's all it is, you can easily tighten some of these bolts. I think they're 5mm hex. And the last thing I check is this. It's just the free spinning of the motor. Remember, this thing should be unplugged from power. You can just spin this by hand. It should spin nice and smoothly and quietly, both ways. Spin it one way, it should be nice and quiet. If it's not nice and quiet and smooth, you just got a bad motor. And it looks like the motor's working, it's just a noisy motor for whatever happened. And maybe it's because this fan came off and it's rattling around this cage, or maybe something inside the motor is just bad and it just needs to be replaced. It's just a noise. Sometimes motors get noisy and they're perfectly good and they'll last a long time, but nobody wants a noisy motor. So just make sure it's nice free play, spinning by itself nicely, and it's quiet and smooth. It should spin smoothly and quietly. And that's about all you need to look for. To put this belt back on, just hook it behind here. Make sure it's hooked on there good. Also, just make sure this is not loose. Make sure this gear here, make sure that's tight and this gear's not coming off or loose, and this, obviously that one too. But hook this behind there on that, and then you just just hook it on the back edge of it or the front edge, and you just start turning it, just rotate it onto the gear. Or you could rotate it the other way too, depending on which way your clamp is. That's usually, with your clamps halfway down, you can go either way. But if it's all the way up, you can only go one way. If it's all the way down, you can only go the other way. It's pretty easy. Just don't pinch your thumb or fingers when you're going in here. You'll pinch them and get them a little bit if you're not careful. So always stay towards the center a little bit more so on this. So, but check those things for us if you can, and we'll go from there.